Like and follow if you love horror. Houston is the sort of city where you can get anything you want. Drugs, excitement, any matter of contraband. It was a haven for the worst you could ever dream of becoming. It didn't have the glamour of New Orleans or Vegas, and it's not like the cops would turn a blind eye to what you were doing. They were just busy with serious crimes, violent crimes. They didn't have time to mess around with kids who were throwing a party where they weren't supposed to be. Kids, after all, were going to be kids. Eric Schoeneck had driven by this place hundreds of times. He had watched the old trail, the lake, and the house pass by without comment so often that it seemed like a fixture no one would ever notice. But that was perfect. He had scored good and wanted to celebrate. He invited his best friends and the hottest girls who were the most fun and got things into full swing. Contraband in the bathroom, whiskey everywhere, and things were starting to heat up. Eric stood on the table, naked, the chemicals fueling his ego and bravery. "I'm so friggin' hot right now, I'm on fire!" Eric was so deep into impressing the girls that he didn't realize they weren't staring in wonder, they were staring in horror. And they weren't staring at him, but at the uninvited guest behind him. Agent Diana Saferstein of the FBI stood at the edge of a simple sand parking lot before an old red cabin surrounded by police cruisers and warning tape. Her black, full-length coat wafted in the breeze juxtaposed against her short, coarse, tight black hair. Her hazel eyes scanned the scene from a distance, falling on the subtle details that the unis, what the FBI called regular uniform cops, always seemed to miss. A simple path cut through the tall wild grass of the surrounding valley. The tracking dogs were nowhere near it, and the unis were utterly blind to it. Stranger than that, the path cut almost robotically straight, as though a surveyor had mapped it. The agent pulled out her phone and snapped a photo in as high resolution as she could. She'd make sure to get forensics to do the same thing, some unis to follow the trail. The cabin itself looked like the former owners might have been trying to renovate. The chip red paint had been sanded down, old boards had been removed entirely, and the bare spots were covered over. The windows were brand new and modern, unlike the rest of the cabin, which could have easily been 70 years old. A section of the roof was tarped, clearly where rotten shingles had been removed. Diana pulled out a tablet and thumbed in notes about every detail. The condition of the cabin, the undisturbed trail. She even noted that the uniform officers, but more importantly the dogs, had missed the path entirely. There are more apparent details to take in, though. An SUV, registered to one of the victims, sat in the sandlot at an off angle. A short but deep groove lay behind each of the four tires. One of the rear doors was slightly ajar. Diana opened her report she'd been sent. 5 deceased. 1 Caucasian female, 23, found face down in the nearby lake, the back of her head removed as though chopped off. 1 Caucasian male, 23, located just upshore, blunt force trauma to the head. 1 African male, 22, hung by the head from a cast iron coat hanger. 1 Korean female, 24, mandible split to the neck broken, face down the first few steps of the stairs inside. The last was the most chilling. Caucasian male, 25, immolated inside the fireplace. The Vic had been stuffed into the fireplace while the perp blocked the fire screen. When the uniform officers found it, the body looked like a charred skeleton trying to escape hell. 5 perfectly healthy, fit young individuals had been systematically overpowered and murdered in the most brutal fashion. "Excuse me, Agent Saferstein?" A local troop officer approached Diana. She didn't respond. Her eyes continued to glide over the scene before her. "Miss Saferstein," the trooper said again. She looked up at him, scanning him carefully. Diana was famously bad at first impressions, and was forgetting something important. She hadn't thought to respond, even though the trooper now had her attention. "Sergeant Brimley?" she asked. She could see the sergeant's badge, but was trying to be formal. "Yes, ma'am. The scene's all yours." He gestured for her to enter freely. "May I ask what the FBI's interest is?" We've identified a pattern in these killings and are investigating them for a deeper possible link, she said, still taking in the details outside. Ma'am, the Vicks were all different races, hair color, body type, male and female. There were different sexual orientations, and the method used was different for each individual. What pattern could there possibly be? The trooper was genuinely curious, but also completely confused. It's not the way they were killed, but the nature of their murders and location, Diana explained. All of them were violently murdered. The level of malice in each killing was considerably excessive. None of the Vicks shown the usual patterns of self-defense, like skin or blood under their fingernails. From the wounds, they clearly attempted to defend themselves, but were overpowered so quickly and easily that there were barely signs of struggle. Then we have the cabin itself. This cabin was already the site of a multiple homicide, 4 individuals, all murdered in particularly brutal fashion, with hardly any signs of a struggle. Yeah, but not even the same number of Vicks, and this is an isolated camping spot. It's entirely possible it's been used for more than just 2 murders. The trooper was trying not to insult the agent's assessment, but he couldn't find the pattern. The same cabin, exactly 1 year to the date from the last murder. She stared at him, trying to judge what his expression meant. I was not aware of that, he confessed. Yes, I gathered. Diana tended to overpower subordinates and seemed snobby, but she had a hard time expressing herself any other way. I have a feeling you're also unaware of the foot trail approaching the house from the forest line. I believe that's the direction of the lake where the first body was discovered. I'm sorry? He was really confused at this point. If there were a trail, the hounds would have sniffed it out. Yes, she said, turning her attention back to the tablet. They found the second body by the lake but didn't notice the trail. If I understand the situation correctly, cadaver dogs were used to find all the bodies. Correct, the trooper nodded, trying not to sound like an amateur but also not following her logic. Well, if there wasn't another body on the trail to find, why would they have found the trail? She asked rhetorically, typing in a few things. The trooper looked down and pursed his lips, clearly embarrassed. Diana didn't notice and continued. It would be easy for unis to overlook it. They've been in the field looking for clues, but something like the footpath of bent grass wouldn't show up if you're right on top of it. It's the sort of thing you'd have to notice from a distance, which is why I've been standing here. If there's a footpath, there are footprints. She looked up from her tablet and saw the trooper making a funny face, his cheeks slightly red. At that moment, Diana realized she'd done it again. It was hard to smooth over these kinds of diplomatic exchanges between law enforcement agencies. She knew it would be even harder if she kept her habit of steamrolling people with her observations. She decided she should say something to encourage the sergeant. You've done a fine job. I'll take it from here. She forced herself to believe it in hopes that it wouldn't come off as sarcastic. Yeah, we'll take it from here. An unfamiliar commanding voice with more than a bit of gravel came from behind her. Diana turned around and was immediately met by a tall, powerful-looking woman with an official FBI blazer, aviator glasses, and a mane of auburn hair that was slowly fading to gray. Supervisor Special Agent Miranda Murdoch. Agent Murdoch extended a hand. Diana took Murdoch's hand firmly. It wasn't aware that I was being assigned assistance. Even better, you're being reassigned to a new team, namely mine. The woman smiled, taking off her shades. I have to say I'm impressed. You picked up on the patterns of these killings. That's the kind of thing my specialists usually have to do. What exactly are your agents specialized in? Diana was unsure how to proceed. If this were a special assignment, she'd not been briefed. And I wasn't informed of a new assignment. No, you wouldn't have. Murdoch purposely held back information she felt may upset her new agent. Diana, despite her strengths, had no political acumen, and truth be told, her previous supervisor would be glad to be rid of her. Go ahead and give your supervisor a quick ring. We'll take it from here. And when you're ready, come meet us inside. Very well. Before you proceed, I expect forensics has discovered the amygdala is missing in at least 4 of the Vicks, Diana said, then pulled up her phone. Murdoch watched her leave with a subtle smile. She was joined by a scraggly man in a suit that seemed to fit him as well as a fish took to fire.